Paylocity presents Healthcare Reform Beyond the Hype. In this series, we're taking a look at the shared responsibility provisions within the Affordable Care Act, also known as Play or Pay. Now, these provisions take effect with the benefit plan years beginning on or after January 1st of 2014. Shared responsibility requires that all large employers must offer an affordable health plan providing minimum value to 95% of all full-time employees or face a penalty. In this video, we'll be taking a look at what defines affordability and minimum value as far as the shared responsibility portion is concerned. Before we do so, we first want to understand the consequences of affordability and minimum value and the penalties for shared responsibility. For an employer who offers coverage, but that coverage is determined to be either unaffordable or is not providing minimum value, the penalty triggered is $250 per month, equivalent of $3,000 per year, for each full-time employee that receives a subsidy for exchange coverage. Now, when we talk about this penalty, there are a couple key things to note. Number one, if that an employer does offer an affordable plan of minimum value, but the employee chooses to purchase exchange coverage anyhow, there's no penalty for the employer. Also note that the penalty that can be owed when the coverage is unaffordable or doesn't provide minimum value can never be greater than the penalty owed for not offering any coverage whatsoever. So with that being said, how do we define affordability itself? You can almost think of this as being a conversation between regulators and employers that went something like this. Regulators said, well, a health plan is going to be affordable if the cost of single coverage in the least expensive plan available to the employee does not exceed 9.5% of an employee's household income. So a couple key things there. The basis for the test is single coverage, regardless of the coverage the employee actually elects, but the basis of the test is being done off of single coverage. Now, this clause itself caused some concern from employers saying, well, I really don't know what household income is. I really only know what I pay the employee themselves. You might have an employee pay $925 who's married to a dentist pulling down six figures, or you might have a senior accountant, for example, whose spouse runs a business at a loss and might actually be eligible. So there are a lot of factors beyond our control when trying to calculate this based off of household income. So then regulators relented and said, well, that's a good point, and they released some safe harbor options. And as long as an employer demonstrates good faith in complying with the safe harbor, they would not face a penalty. And this is detailed in IRS Notice 2012-58, and of course can be updated at any time by subsequent guidance. So what are the affordability safe harbors that we have available? Well, the affordability test is still based off of single coverage in the employer's least expensive plan, and it cannot exceed 9.5% of income. Now, there are of course multiple safe harbor methods for determining what exactly income is. One option is to use the employee's Box 1 W-2 wages as a basis for the income test. So the single coverage in the least expensive plan could not exceed 9.5% of Box 1 wages. There are also two other methods that are available. You can also choose to use the federal poverty level at a single level as the basis for your affordability test as well. The federal poverty level is consistent within the 48 lower states, but is slightly different in Alaska and Hawaii. The third option available for an affordability safe harbor is to take the employee's hourly rate and multiply that by 130 hours per month, and that's going to be the employee's full-time equivalent wages. So as long as the cost of single coverage in that plan did not exceed that, that would constitute that plan as being affordable for safe harbor purposes. Now, the second piece of this is a plan of minimum value. So what exactly does it take to have a plan of minimum value? Minimum value, simply put, means that the plan covers at least 60% of the total allowed cost of benefits. So this includes co-pays and deductibles, so it's not simply just a percentage of the overall bill that the insurer picks up. This includes all co-pays and deductibles as well. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services will be releasing a calculator tool that will help brokers and employers determine the actual actuarial plan value of that coverage. Right now it's an Excel spreadsheet form at the URL you see below, and it looks something like this. My understanding is there will be a newer version of this that's web native rolling out shortly as well. And taking a look at shared responsibility as a whole, in our next video we're going to take a look at determining employees' full-time status for the purposes of complying with the Shared Responsibility Act.